Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grizzly True Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by Replenishing Care Technologies, the future of sports medicine. To find out more about Replenishing Care and all the products they offer, go to thegrizzlytruth.net, top of the page, click the banner, and it'll tell you all the info you need to know. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great today, Mike. How you doing? Wonderful Tuesday. Things are going. Great, I think it's Tuesday, isn't it? No, today's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
It's actually Wednesday. Yes.
People thought they were.
Time flies. Time flies when it's sunny and 85 degrees every day of your life.
Yeah, it is here too today. It's supposed to be a high of 70 by Saturday, though.
Talk to me in 4 months.
I may not be.
You got a high of 4 degrees.
You might have just pissed me off. Too bad to talk to you anymore 4 months from now.
Mike, nobody can piss you off. You know that. You are the most consummate, level-headed, unopinionated, well thought out, ready, fire, aim person I've ever met in my life.
All right, so the BS portion of the show's over, and our topics today are going to be NFL quarterbacks, Khalil Mack and Vontae Davis. We're going to start off with the NFL quarterbacks, and we're just going to do a brief summary of each one so far. We'll start off with the AFC South, or the NFC South. I think that's the place to start because you got Ryan Fitzpatrick, or Fitzmagic as he's called, who so far this year has led the Buccaneers to a surprising 2-0 start, including a win over the defending world champion Philadelphia Eagles. He's been 48 for 61, 78.7%, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. And the thing that has impressed me with Fitzpatrick, who I think you'd have to give an A so far this season, is the fact that Game 1 against the Saints, he beat the Saints throwing the ball deep. In Game 2 against the Eagles, he beat the Eagles with short and intermediate routes with a long ball tossed in here or there. So I think the question with Fitzpatrick is this. He's playing great, but can he be consistent?
Well, yeah, in a player like Fitzpatrick, that's always been his shtick throughout his entire 15-year career. He's got a quarterback rating right now of 151, which is off the charts if anybody's got him in a fantasy pool, I guess. And you're right, he's thrown over 4 balls, 40 yards and deeper for touchdowns. So the longest being 75 yards for a touchdown. So what's impressed me most about Fitzpatrick is really the leadership that he's shown for this team too. I mean, this was kind of an immature team, kind of based around Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston. I was getting there. And they were always kind of acting a little immature and kind of not showing the maturity you'd think that a playoff caliber team would do. And all of a sudden, this team's gotten real serious about football, and they're playing good football top to bottom. So, I mean, he's got to be playing the best of any quarterback in the league right now. But what happens next week? And is he a week-to-week thing? And do we see a fall-off of him where he totally tanks and goes? So, right now, if I'm building a football team for next week, I'm putting him on my quarterback right now. But, for the rest of the season, that still remains to be up in the air. Well, he's doing great.
And I would think this. It's impossible to think he's going to continue to play at this pace. Because if he does, He'll be in the Hall of Fame off of one season. I mean, with a quarterback ranking of over 150. If you look at him last year, though, I think people read too much. I think he's a good quarterback. Last year, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. He struggled with the Jets the year before, for 2-3 years before that, but who doesn't struggle with the Jets? When you look at him, though, in 2015 with the Jets, 31 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. The year before that with the Texans, 17-8. The Titans, 14-12. But before that, you're looking at 24, 23 touchdown passes, throwing more touchdowns than interceptions. So I think he's a guy that gets underrated more than anything else. I think he's a solid NFL quarterback who's just playing out of his mind right now. And when you go look at the New Orleans Saints, you got Drew Brees. And Drew Brees' team is 1-1. They've been disappointing so far, but it's not his fault. He's got a quarterback rating of 123. The first game, which they lost to Fitzpatrick, he was 37 for 45, 439 yards, 3 touchdowns. Last week, they're down 12-3 to Cleveland. He brings them back at the end, and he's completing 80% of his passes this year. And if Alvin Kamara can step it up and the defense steps it up, I think the Saints are still a playoff team just because they've got Drew Brees.
Well, I agree entirely. He's like you say, completing 80% of his passes. So no picks at all this year yet, and no interceptions at all. And he's one of the few quarterbacks that are playing consistently who hasn't thrown a pick yet. And Drew is not the reason that the Saints are struggling right now by any stretch of the imagination. Top to bottom, again, you said he's got a high quarterback rating as well and playing well. So I think the other team's going to have to rally around Drew to play up to what Drew's capable of doing for that team to be successful in the playoffs. But he certainly is having another banner year. What, 39 now? Is he going to be pushing 40 a year pretty soon?
Up there. Yeah.
He's getting up there. So for him to be playing at that level that he's playing right now is really outstanding play. But we've just come to expect that of Drew Brees. It's kind of like he's one of those guys that's never going to age. So I don't think anything that's going wrong with the Saints right now is on Drew Brees, and he would fit into pretty much any football program in the NFL right now and be welcomed.
Yeah, and because of him, even with the bad defense and no running game, they could easily be 2-0 just because of him. Next up, right. we go to Atlanta and Matt Ryan, who's a guy people always debate whether he's a lead or not. Game 1 against Philadelphia, they lose a close game, 18-12. They had huge red zone issues, 21 for 43, no touchdowns, 1 pick, was sacked 4 times. You come back last week in what I think was a huge game, even though it was only week 2 for the Falcons, and they beat Carolina 31-24. He was more like Matt Ryan, 23 for 28, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He's not playing great right now, but, I mean, with his history, he's going to play well enough. And the Falcons have a ton of injuries. If they can get through this first 6 games at 3-3, get everybody back healthy, I think they'll be fine. But right now, I think there's no doubt that he is playing like the 3rd best quarterback in this division.
Well, and Atlanta's also a team that's not 100% reliant on its quarterback to move the ball or to put points on the board. They've got a good, solid defense. They've got a running game. They've got all kinds of short yardage weapons that you use more really as a running game. Really, when you dump over your tight ends over the middle or things of that nature, really you kind of look at that more as just a quick hit running game. You're using it for getting yards on the ground more than you are through the air. Matt's the kind of quarterback who doesn't make mistakes for his team, who does what he needs to do to win football games, and does it very consistently. I think he's a very good fit for Atlanta, and I agree he's playing well this year too. He hasn't given away anything yet. He hasn't cost his team put his team in precarious situations, and he's doing the job he needs to do at a high level of competence to see that Atlanta advances into the playoffs at this point in time.
And really, all 4 quarterbacks are playing well in the AFC South. Cam Newton has got a passer rating close to 100, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. They beat Dallas to start the year. He did not play great there, but the biggest problem there is the offensive line. When you look at him last week, he throws 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, gets sacked twice. In week 1, he got sacked 3 times by the Cowboys, and he doesn't have a lot of weapons. So Cam's kind of doing this by himself with Christian McCaffrey. I think they've got a big game this weekend since it's a home game against Cincinnati. When I look at him now, the offensive line issues, I think, are going to hold his stats down most of the year.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of Cam play last week, and I was actually really impressed with him. I'm usually not a big Cam Newton fan for one reason or another, but I agree with you. He was carrying a lot of the load of the offense on his own shoulders and didn't seem to have a lot of help from his offensive line, as you said. Not finding a lot of receivers open. I don't know if it's because they aren't moving correctly or they're running the right routes or what's going on, but when he takes off with the football, he takes off and runs to get yards, not just to get out of bounds and protect himself. I mean, he doesn't like going out of bounds. He doesn't like sliding. He'll do it when it's necessary. But he's a kid who I think really wants to win. I'm just not sure he's really in the best position. Quarterback is the best position for him, although I don't have any idea where else you put him. So he is a quarterback, but he doesn't always think like a normal quarterback with trying to move the ball through the air. Sometimes that works for you, sometimes that works against you. But I'd say Cam starting off the year, seems to have made fewer mistakes than we've seen in the past. And the games I've seen him play, the times I've seen him play, especially like on red zone, he's making good decisions in the red zone and making good decisions with the football, protecting the football for his team so they can hang on to it offensively.
Yeah, and we transitioned back to the AFC. We're going to go to the AFC North. And when you look at it, I think Joe Flacco's been hit or miss, just played well against Buffalo. Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger, terrible the first week, great week 2. Cleveland, Tyrod Taylor, kind of the same thing. Good week 2, bad week 1. I think right now the best quarterback in the AFC North is Andy Dalton. If you look at it, like the first pass he throws of the year gets intercepted against the Colts. Since then, it's been 6 touchdowns, no picks, a quarterback rating of 108.5, threw 4 touchdown passes on the Thursday night game in prime time against the Baltimore Ravens. And I think right now Dalton is the most consistent in a inconsistent division.
Yeah, I agree. There's none of the 3 quarterbacks aside from Dalton are having a good start to a good year. I think Taylor actually is doing about what we would expect for him to do. I think he's playing up to his expectations. And I think there's always that dark cloud looming over his head called Mayfield. When are we going to see him? And I got a feeling half the people are just waiting for Tyrod Taylor to fail a little bit so they can get Mayfield in there. And I don't know if that's a good call or not. I mean, certainly the Browns have been competitive in both games they've played, although they still haven't won one. But I don't think it's really been Taylor's fault. Roethlisberger is just all over the place. I really think that team is in such disarray with the Le'Veon Bell situation and now Antonio Brown that I think Ben's not going to get a lot done because I think that team's got other things, other issues well on its mind than that. And Ben has not looked 100% sure. But then Ben's old. I mean, Ben's in the mid-30s, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like 36.
He's got – yeah, 36. He's mid-30s. He's starting to slow down a little bit.
The difference between Roethlisberger and guys like Brady and Breeze is the way Roethlisberger plays. He takes a lot more hits than those guys do.
Right. He plays like a linebacker.
Yeah, but I will give you
the size of a linebacker.
I don't think that he is over the hill. I mean, when you look at him, you watch him this last week, 3 touchdowns, no picks against Kansas City, 39 for 60. Game 1, he was bad, but the entire team was bad. But you look at last year, 28 touchdowns, 14 picks. The year before, 29 and 13. I mean, we could say that he looks old, but as soon as we start saying that, which we did say last week because he did look old against Cleveland, is he comes up with a 39 for 60 for 452 yards and 3 touchdowns.
In a loss.
Yeah, but you know what?
Yeah, so those statistics, when you do that in a loss, well, when you're throwing that many times in a lot, that's a lot of times just piling up stats because you're trying to play catch-up.
They were in the game. I mean, they lost 42 to 37.
Well, I'll say this about Roethlisberger. He still has greatness in him, no doubt, but he needs a lot more tender, loving care now than he did 5 years ago. Well, in other words, his line's got to be
to run the ball.
Well, he needs Le'Veon Bell. He needs a happy Antonio Brown. He needs an offensive line to protect him more because he's not as fast, not as strong, not as agile and mobile as he used to be. So he still has the ability to run the sub-4-minute mile, but he needs a tailwind now to get that done. To kind of use a little bit of an analogy. Whereas before, he could step onto the field and run the sub-4-minute file into a strong headwind. But those days are gone for Ben Roethlisberger. And when you have to divert some of your resources over to protecting him, it takes away from other opportunities to do other things on the field. So, yeah, I still think Ben is a top-tier quarterback in the NFL, but his abilities are in decline, and I think they're going to continue to slide downward. And if they don't get the mess cleaned up in Pittsburgh quickly, I think he's going to be in for a fairly miserable year.
Yeah,
he may statistically put some numbers on the board. He may statistically go that, but how many of those numbers are going to come in wins when he's leading his team, and how many of those numbers are going to come in losses like last weekend where he's trying to get his team back into a game? And there's a huge difference between the two there.
Next up, we've got Joe Flacco, who I think –
Well, we didn't talk – I didn't talk about Dalton. Dalton, I agree. Dalton, I think, is playing outstanding football, but Andy does this all the time. Andy is a great quarterback. He is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. The problem with Andy is he can't stay healthy.
He can't?
it seems like every time something critical starts to come along, Dalton gets hurt.
Really?
And I don't want to say every time. You know the Bengals better than I do, but my perception
3 games in 8 years.
That's all?
Yeah, he got hurt towards the end of 2015, but Dalton.
Well, then I guess he's not as good as I thought he would, because it seems to me he's non-existent in a lot of important games for the Bengals.
No, the coaching is non-existent in a lot of games for the Bengals.
Okay, blame it on the coaching.
Well, yeah, in the NFL, that's what it comes down to. In football overall, it's what it comes down to. That's why Bill Belichick wins all the time, because he's better than everybody else.
And he's got Brady.
And that's why, no, it's because Brady has Belichick. Belichick was a
great
coach before Brady.
They have each other. You have peanut butter. Peanut butter wouldn't be peanut butter without jelly.
Well,
jelly wouldn't be jelly without peanut butter.
Remember this, a few years back when he got knocked out for the season in week 1, they brought Matt Castle in and went 11-5. Next up, we got Tyrod Taylor. And I think with Taylor and Flacco, everybody here is just kind of waiting for Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield to take the field.
Yeah, especially Baker Mayfield. Jackson, I don't know about. I don't know that he is. I have not seen enough of him play to know whether he's better than Flacco. Flacco's just inconsistent. When Flacco's on and playing well, he's a top tier quarterback. The problem is it just seems to me he had the 1 year where he took the team to the Super Bowl. He gets the big contract. It's the highest paid contract of all quarterbacks at that time, and he seems to have never lived up to that again since then. He's been good. He's a decent quarterback, but he just goes through these troughs where he just all of a sudden becomes non-existent in the game, and the team just starts to flounder badly with him. So he's not what I would call a franchise quarterback in any way, shape, or form. I think when he's playing well, and the Ravens generally win. But when he's not, they're not very competitive, and he's not consistent enough to make the Ravens a consistently playoff bound team.
Then we jump to the AFC West, and I think there's no doubt who's playing the best right now, and that's Patrick Mahomes, who's basically a rookie. First 2 games he starts, he throws for 4 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's got a passer rating of 143.3. I don't have much to say here. The kid so far has been amazing, and I have not seen a rookie quarterback come out and play like this since Dan Marino in 1983. Now, the question is, it's kind of like the baseball pitcher that comes out and the first time through the league, he's 5-0 and his ERA is under 2, but then everybody gets a book on him. And it's kind of the same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, who we'll talk about a little bit. Now everybody has a little bit of a book on him. You can game plan for him, and it changes things. So I think that Mahomes, when we get to by the middle of the season, we'll know exactly what we've got there. But right now, I think it's too soon. But right now, he's as good as anybody in the game. You there, Steve? All right, guys. Looks like we lost Steve. We're going to run a commercial, and we'll be right back after this. Replenishing Technologies helps athletes of all levels train, recover, and perform at their absolute best. We do this by offering the PEMF 120, the world's leading pulsed electromagnetic field therapy device. Workouts, injury, and stress cause cells to lose their natural power. PEMF works like a battery charger, helping cells regain the power needed to dump toxins, take in oxygen and nutrients, and repair.
Hello?
95% of athletes report less pain, increased range of motion, more energy, and they simply feel better after using PEMF 120. If you'd like to count yourself among that group, contact us at www.replenishingtechnologiesinc.com. All right, we're back on Survive in Advance. We got Steve back. I don't know what happened to him. What happened to you, Steve?
Steve was sitting here. Steve didn't go anywhere.
Okay.
Steve's pulling 5 bars on my iPhone and doing great.
All right, so the conversation is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of Patrick Mahomes?
What's not to say? Great about him. He's been fun to watch. He's living in a dream world right now. Let's see how long his bubble floats before it bursts, if it bursts at all. maybe the kid's the real deal. I mean, you can't pass any judgment on him other than he's having the time of his life right now. He's in a great program. He's with a great coach. There was not a lot of pressure on him probably until now. Now the pressure is going to start mounting on him. And the bullseye is going to start getting big on Kansas City's back, and it's going to get huge on his back. So let's see how he responds to it all. I think that anybody thinks that he can keep statistically the numbers going that he's doing right now is not very viable, but he looks great right now. I mean, he's got the second best quarterback rating just behind Fitzpatrick in the NFL. So bully for him. I'm having fun watching him play.
Well, put
10
it like
touchdown
this,
passes
Steve,
in 2 games.
if he continues at this rate, he'll throw 80 touchdown passes and no interceptions.
He'll break Peyton Manning's record, who Tom Brady broke, didn't he?
He'll break more than he'll break every record ever known to man.
Right.
He could retire and be in the Hall of Fame 5 years later. Next up.
There's nothing negative to say about the kid right now. I mean, he's on a ride. You just let him ride it. And, when you catch a wave like that, just show it off and go. And it'll come crashing down to some degree. Maybe not that bad. Maybe it'll just come down to be a normal quarterback in the NFL. But right now, he's Superman with a football in his hand.
All right, next up is another guy that from time to time has been confused with Superman during his career, just not as much as it should have been. Phillip Rivers, who so far this year has a passer rating of almost, or quarterback rating of 120, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. They did lose to Patrick Mahomes in game 1, but I don't think you can blame that on Rivers. He was 34 for 51, 3 touchdowns, 424 yards. This last week, he beat the Bills, which I think pretty much every quarterback's going to say this year. But he was 23 for 27, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I think he's on a team talented enough to go to the playoffs. He's got a huge matchup in Los Angeles at the Rams this weekend. What's your take on Phillip Rivers, Steve?
Rivers has kind of always been the quarterback that I've always wished I'd like to see him play on a Super Bowl contending team to see what he would do. I always thought that he was better than he showed during the season. And I think that's partially because of the teams he played on. Or injuries that occurred on teams that he was playing on when the Chargers had good teams. But I just don't think we've ever seen the full potential of Phillip Rivers in terms of being a leadership quarterback or a Super Bowl capable quarterback. I think he physically has the ability to do it. I don't know what his leadership skills are like. Maybe they may be a little lacking there. Maybe that's what's held him back a little bit. But I've always felt that what I've seen, when I've watched Phillip Rivers play, I've always felt that he's underachieved based on what ability potential he looks like he has. And I think if there's ever a guy deserving of getting on a really good team and just before he gets too old and just showing his skill sets and showing what he can do if he's running a team like the Rams or, the Patriots or something like that, I think he'd be a lot of fun to watch. I just think he's always been mired down in a team that's not quite as quality a football player as he is as a quarterback.
Yeah, but you have seen him in big situations in the playoffs.
Sure.
Play huge.
Right.
I mean, he did it in Indianapolis a couple times. Next up, we're going to talk about Case Keenum. The only thing I can say about Case Keenum is this. If you look at his stats, he's not done much. But if you look at the end stat with the 2-0 record, he has won his first 2 games. He has, though, thrown more interceptions than touchdowns, but 4 interceptions, 3 touchdown passes. Only thrown for 550 yards. But the question here to me is this. I mean, he's beaten Seattle and Oakland, who are 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. So I think the jig is up as soon as they play a little bit better competition, because I think Case Keenum is a guy that needs a lot more around him. But Denver has a lot around him, and he still hasn't done a lot. So I think in the end, Case Keenum and the Denver Broncos are going to flame out, and I think this division is going to be decided between Kansas City and the Chargers. Keenum's a solid quarterback. That's it. Nothing more. What do you think, Steve?
Denver's a team built around defense. They're winning more because of their defense than their offensive output or production. Keenum's kind of always been a journeyman quarterback, kind of really a good backup to have on your team. Somebody that can come in and start when you have an injury is not going to bring your program down to rookie status or somebody who's never taken a snap status before. He's a yeoman quarterback. I think you're getting right out of Case Keenum what you're going to get. And if Denver can survive with that offensively, then they're going to be fine. But Denver's going to have to rely on its defense to win. But I do think as soon as it gets to a point where they go up against an offense like the Rams or something like that, a high-powered offense, and Denver's defense is going to need help to win a football game, I don't think Case Keenum and his offense is going to be able to deliver.
All right, next up we've got Derek Carr, who was the guy that a couple years ago was in the MVP conversation before he got hurt at the end of the season. Since then, things have not went as well. John Gruden's there now. Week 1 against the Rams, his team played well enough to win the game. He basically pissed that game away, throwing 3 picks in the second half. We come back to Denver last week. He was 29 for 32, 90% completion, which is amazing, but 1 touchdown, no interceptions. And the Raiders are a team with 2 antiquated running backs, Marshawn Lynch, Doug Martin. And for this team to be successful, Derek Carr has to throw touchdown passes. And in 2 weeks, he's only got 1.
Yeah, Derek Carr to me is always underachieved. And he's starting off the season again this way too. He's got allegedly now he has the guru of quarterback coaches in his hip pocket now, and Gruden, Gruden, self-professed guru of quarterback coaches. So we should, according to him, he is.
But he's never coached a quarterback that was worth a damn.
Okay, I said it's self-professed. Did you hear the words self-professed?
He's never taken a quarterback that was young and turned him into anything. The best thing that's happened for him was Rich Gannon, who was already a veteran, who had his best years under him. But then you look, he goes with Johnson in Tampa Bay. They draft all kind of quarterbacks. Nobody turned out to be anything. He's overrated, and he's going to be fired by the end of next year. But go ahead.
Who's going to be fired?
John Gruden.
And for $100 million?
Yep.
It's going to give me 2 years.
That's what I said, after next year.
After next year, okay. Derek Carr, to me, is a quarterback that better be showing massive amounts of improvement because of John Gruden. And because I know Gruden has come out publicly and said that this is a quarterback that he wants to coach in the NFL and the guy that he wants to develop and train to lead the Raiders to the promised land of Las Vegas. So I'm not impressed with Derek Carr. I've not ever been impressed with Derek Carr. But I think for Derek Carr to live up to his billing and expectations, we better start seeing massive amounts of improvement in him throughout the year. He better start winning football games for the football team because he has the self-professed, allegedly best quarterback coach working with him in the NFL right now.
All right, next up we'll jump over to the NFC North. And this may surprise people, but right now I think Kirk Cousins is playing the best of all of them, including Aaron Rodgers. 6 touchdowns, 1 pick, 110 quarterback rating. This is a team that is a serious Super Bowl contender, I think, Steve. I think they're going to win the NFC North. And Kirk Cousins, we're going to talk about Khalil Mack's shot at an MVP. Kirk Cousins may have a shot at an MVP with this team. You got Dalvin Cook running the ball. The offensive line still has some question marks, but they've got one of the best defenses, especially front 7 in football. And when you look at what he did this last week, he leads a 2 to 3 touchdown comeback at Lambeau Field, throws 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, 35 for 48, 425 yards. What's your take on Kirk Cousins?
I like him a lot. I liked him in Washington. I just didn't think he had supporting cast around him. I think that he was not able to use all the skills and talents there, but I think when he stepped into the situation at Minnesota, they've got a complete team. They use their defense a lot. They're not so reliant on the offense to win football games. It frees up things. He's got a good running game tied to him. He makes smart decisions on the field. He's got good protection. He's accurate with his throws. He's making smart decisions on the field. I think Minnesota and Los Angeles are the 2 teams to beat in the NFC, and I think they'll clash at some point in time to play for the right to go to the Super Bowl. It'll be one of those 2 teams in the Super Bowl. On paper, it should be. I agree with you. Kirk Cousins certainly has an opportunity to be an MVP candidate, as well as possibly even a most improved player candidate in terms of what he's doing now, in terms of what he had potential to do at Washington but didn't get done. So great move for him. I wish him well. I like to see him play. I like his style of play. And he's right in that same slot mold as kind of Blake Bortles, kind of those blue-collar quarterbacks that just go out and get things done. And they don't do it with a lot of panache and flash, but he does not make a lot of mistakes. And I think that's what wins championships for you, when you get your quarterbacks not giving games away through dumb decisions.
Panache. Do you even know the definition of panache?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to
Suave faire.
Do you know the definition of suave faire?
Soirée with flair.
All right. Next up,
in style.
Next up, we've got Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdowns, no picks, but he throws a pass in Week 1 against Chicago to his defender in the stomach. If the guy catches it, they lose the game. And if Minnesota's field goal kicker doesn't choke away the game, they could be 0-2 right now. I think this is the Aaron Rodgers show. I don't think the offensive line is that great. There's no running game. The defense is not very good. But he is still one of the best quarterbacks in football. And as long as they have him, they're probably going to win 10 games, Steve.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in football.
No,
I don't think he's one of the best. Yeah, I think he is. Individually, statistically, as a quarterback, I think he's as good as it gets. And who?
Drew Brees.
I don't know. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have better leadership skills than Drew Brees does.
Aaron Rodgers? Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, well, it's just my opinion.
And I'll take Tom Brady over both of them anyway.
Well, Tom Brady's got Belichick.
So
how much of that leadership is Belichick? Is Brady or is it Belichick?
Doesn't matter. You still got to play.
Okay, all right. Well, I think Aaron Rodgers is the preeminent quarterback in the NFL. The problem with Aaron Rodgers right now is he's living on play to play. We don't know how bad his leg is. It seems to be in games you're watching him play. He seems to favor it more and more toward the end of each game, which means it's probably not healing correctly, if there is any healing going on at all. We don't know if he goes down. I'll tell you what, if Rodgers goes down, the Packers tank farther than any other team than if they lost their quarterback right now.
Yeah.
If any other quarterback for another team goes down, I think they would not tank as bad as the Packers would tank if Rodgers goes down. And Rodgers looks to me like he's one play away from going down, one hit. One solid hit on that knee, depending on how bad it is damaged. And the Packers are just no longer an entity for the season at all. Otherwise, they're still going to contend because Rodgers makes big plays. And he makes them consistently, and you can almost count on him making those plays almost every time he needs to. So statistically, he's got good numbers. He throws the long ball well. He dumps the ball off short. He's got a good backfield with him. His line's not that good, and his leg is hobbling him in terms of not being able to scramble as much as he used to, but he's still smart, still sees the field as well as anybody. And he's one of the 2 or 3 quarterbacks I would build a football team around if I was bringing a new team into the NFL this day and say, who do you want as your quarterback? He still would be one of my 2 or 3 picks.
All right, next up, we got Matthew Stafford, who Week 1 was terrible. Week 2 was pretty damn good. But I think Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback stuck in a bad situation. I think Matt Patricia is in way over his head, and this is only going to get worse for Stafford. But I don't think it's Stafford's fault. I think it's what surrounds him.
I agree entirely. He's not putting up terrible numbers, but he just has nothing around him at all. He's just this. Boy, it'd kind of be like being Jeff Gordon driving, the 44th place car, the best driver in the world getting in the car, NASCAR, and just being a piece of junk. And that's kind of what Stafford is. He's not necessarily the best quarterback in the NFL, but he certainly is not going to be able to show his skill sets in the environment that he's in right now. He's going to be scrambling for most of his life. He's going to be coming from behind and playing from behind every game, which means you don't have the luxury of finessing the ball and doing the things that you like to do. You're forced to do the things you have to do, throw into coverages you don't want to throw into, which lends itself to more picks. I don't see a very good year for Matt Stafford. I'm glad he's got the contract that he's got because he's going to need it to cover him because he's not going to put those stats up again for a few years. But I don't see Detroit climbing out of this hole for quite a while.
Well, especially now that Chicago looks like they're on the right track. Minnesota's already loaded. Green Bay has Aaron Rodgers, so Detroit's going to kind of sit there in fourth for a while unless they do something with the front office and the head coaching position. Next up, we've got Mitchell Trubisky, who I think is the difference between the Bears being a playoff team and not being a playoff team, and I think he makes them not a playoff team. I just think he's a guy. They traded up to get to the number 2 pick last year for him. I think it was a huge mistake, and I just don't see this working out for him. I mean, if you look at him last year, he started 12 games, threw 7 touchdown passes, 7 picks. This year, he's been 2-2. Hasn't thrown for over 200 yards in a game yet. I just don't see it with Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, he's an oddity. He's the typical Bears quarterback almost, and he fits right in the mold of what we've come to be accustomed to with quarterbacks that play for the Chicago Bears. He is not going to be an Aaron Rodgers where he's going to win football games on his own. I've seen him play twice now. A lot of it on red zone, so you're seeing him in important situations. He doesn't seem to make a lot of mistakes. He just doesn't seem to make a lot of things happening. Now, that could be a good thing for a kid like that. If you build your defense and you're building around Khalil Mack and you're getting known as a strong defensive team as the Bears are becoming, and if you can keep your quarterback at least not being a liability to you and he continues to develop and get better and better and better, there's a reason why he was so highly sought after in the draft.
No.
And somebody had to see some potential in him.
Yeah, guys
and maybe he's just one of these.
The Chicago Bears' last great quarterback was Sid Luckman in the 1940s. There's a reason.
Oh, come on, Bobby Douglas.
Yeah, Bobby Douglas was awesome. He was great at running around. To say that Bobby Douglas was a great quarterback would be a huge stretch.
The only quarterback in the history of the NFL that ran for more yards than threw for in the same season.
Well, then maybe they should have played him at running back.
He did.
Exactly. So
from the quarterback position.
I don't think Bobby Douglas qualifies as a great quarterback.
I don't think Trubisky is going to be a huge liability to the Bears. I think that he will not be a strong asset that will necessarily win games for the Bears, but I don't think he's going to cost the Bears losses. I think he's just going to go in there.
He already has. He costed the Packers game. He didn't make a play in that second half. They threw the ball on a 3rd and 1. He missed badly on that. He read the wrong thing, screwed it up. And you were kidding about Bobby Douglas being a great quarterback, right?
Yes, I was kidding about Bobby Douglas being a great quarterback. Yeah.
You know, he is one of the few quarterbacks that has a 2-to-1 interception to touchdown ratio.
He and Dave Kingman, 400 home runs and 800 strikeouts for Dave Kingman.
I think it was a lot more than 800 probably, but
yeah, you got the message.
Yeah, I think this though. I think
Trubisky's
when
not going to be.
You protect your quarterback, he never develops and he never gets good. If you look at the New York Jets, they had, what was his name from USC? Mark Sanchez. And Mark Sanchez, by just playing defense and not screwing everything up, they went to 2 straight AFC championship games. Lost them both. But it stunted his growth. He never became an NFL quarterback. So after those 2 years, when you lose a little defense, the quarterbacks never learned to play quarterback. And then the Jets have been a mess ever since. And we jump over to the AFC South, and you look at Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles is a guy 2 years ago that played really well. Last year, he was bad. All right?
Are we done with Trubisky?
I'm done with Trubisky because we're going to go, because I'm going to give you a comparison here, and I think Blake Bortles is this comparison. Blake Bortles in the playoffs last year, they let the chains off of him, and he played awesome. He scored 43 points to beat Pittsburgh, threw for almost 400 yards in the AFC Championship game against New England, and this week he throws for 377 yards and 4 touchdowns against New England. They have a great defense. They have a solid running game. But the one thing that I think Jacksonville has done, and it started at the end of last year, is they decided to find out if Blake Bortles could be their quarterback or not. And they found out in the playoffs he could. They gave him a lot of money. And people said, well, you can't do that off 3 or 4 games. But those 3 or 4 games were against a high level of competition. And then this year, when they came out against the Patriots, they got a quick lead. And when they got that quick lead, they continued to throw the ball. So what they've done is they have forced Blake Bortles to develop instead of stunning his development by just saying, don't make a mistake. Because if you've got a quarterback, and for 2 years, like Mark Sanchez, all he hears is, just don't throw an interception. After a while, you start to question if these guys think you can play. And if you think that they don't think you can play and they know you better than anybody outside of yourself, I think it tends to hurt the confidence of the quarterback overall. And the quarterback starts to doubt himself because he knows that the quarterback or that the offensive coordinator is calling plays so you don't beat yourself.
I see your point, but how many years did we hear the Jaguars are never going to win with Bortles at quarterback? I mean, they'd be rated this guy year in and year out, year in and year out. Jacksonville stuck with him, They didn't take the heat and dump him or try and move somebody else in there. They stayed with Bortles the whole time. And look what he's turned into. I see Trubinsky as being kind of the same kind of thing. Now, I agree if they protect Trubinsky, but the Bears can't protect Trubinsky any more than Jacksonville can protect Blake Bortles. You've got to turn him loose at some point because you've got to have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback to win the Super Bowl.
Wait a second.
All I'm saying with Trubinsky is I'm not. The judge is still out on whether he has potential to get there yet. He's only been in the league 1 year plus this year.
Yeah, he does.
And then only now is the Bears even get respectability to any degree to where they're not considered a doormat. So let's give Trubinsky a little bit of time. Bortles has earned his position, and I'm happy for Blake because that guy took more heat and more crap about being a crap quarterback in the NFL and getting paid a lot of money for doing nothing than probably any quarterback that was a regular starter in the NFL in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And he's earned his position, and he's earned the right to be doing the things that he's doing. And I'm glad for him, and I'm glad for the Jaguars. Other than the fact that they're in the Colts division, I'd be rooting for them big time.
Well,
so, I think your assessment of Bortles is exactly right. What?
Mitchell Trubisky will never work out. Let's see. Next up, Andrew Luck. My only question right now is, can he throw the ball deep? But I think a lot of that, as we've talked before, is can they protect him? He got sacked twice against Cincinnati, just once last week. But I don't think Washington's pass rush is going to be confused with Cincinnati's. When we look at it, he was pedestrian last week, but they won. The week before that, he was 39 for 53, 319 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 1 pick that was bad when he threw it, and especially because it came right after Dalton's pick. But I think this Colts team, as long as Andrew Luck is here, can win 6 to 8 games because I think they're better talent-wise than people think. I still think they're missing some key positions, but in the end, when you got a guy like Andrew Luck at quarterback, you got a chance in any game you play.
Right. The key here with Andrew is just I think they're coddling him a little bit right now, just trying to really test it out game-wise, what he can and can't do. He has not thrown a ball over 40 yards, a completion over 40 yards yet. So they really aren't focused on the long ball. That could be part of Rice's offensive setup right now. The Colts have generally been a team that likes to throw under coverage. We're even using T.Y. Hilton under, letting those guys use their speed to outrun defensive backs and things of that nature. Historically, the Colts, with Luck, have never been really a big long ball team like they were with Manning when they had Harrison and Reggie Wayne and the guys, they'd throw the bombs and make the big time plays. So I think they're bringing off slowly. I think they're really trying to get him into the pocket quick and get the ball released quick to avoid the hits because his offensive line is very, very, very suspect right now. It's inconsistent. The times the offensive line looks like they can protect him all day long, and other times it's like they're in the backfield waiting on Luck to take 3-step drop. So you don't know. I think they want to keep him healthy and not put him back through this again, although it was a non-football related injury that kept him out for 2 seasons. So I think everybody's just being very cautious with Andrew right now. I think the key for him to stay healthy, if Andrew stays healthy, the Colts could be in the talks of a wild card spot if everything stays pretty well balanced in the AFC. If you end up with a lot of 9-7 or 8-8 teams, the Colts could end up being in that mix. And that's about the best you can expect for him. But to me, as far as I'm concerned, I think Andrew throws the ball with zip. Right now, he's putting good pace on the ball. He's accurate on his throws. And he's a little bit better than where I thought he would be at this point in time, coming back into this early in the season.
All right, next up we got Deshaun Watson, who I think has taken a lot of crap. 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They lose a close game to New England, a close game to Tennessee. But the thing that stands out to me is this. Watson can move a little bit. He's already been sacked 7 times this year. That tells me the biggest problem is probably not Watson. He could be holding on to the ball too long. But from what I've seen, the offensive line in Houston is not that good.
I'm going to stick with my guns and volition. I think great athletes don't make great quarterbacks. Great athletes want to do too many different. That's what hurts Cam Newton.
John Elway was pretty good.
Nah, he wasn't. John Elway was slow as molasses.
Really?
He just was strong and tough.
I hope you're kidding.
That doesn't make you a great athlete. I
hope you're kidding about that. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah, but he ran like a 5.10 40.
He did?
So, yeah, he wasn't. He didn't. When he leaped, I think he got 2 inches off the ground. Matter of fact, they said he sprained his ankle one time. It cut his vertical jump in half from 4 inches to 2. So, Elway was a great competitor and a great quarterback.
Okay.
Deshaun Watson, these guys, and Cam Newton, they're great athletes. And great athletes have too many options and too many variables that go in their mind and think they can do too much, and they don't stay in the pocket. They don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't read defenses as well. They pull the trigger on things way too fast, and therefore they never become great leaders, great generals on the field, and they don't do the job of move the chains day in and out. They are players that want to tend to do it entirely on their own. And Deshaun Watson, to me, is filling out to be that exact kind of player. He is just as happy running the ball, taking off, scrambling and going, and using his speed and his quickness and his agility as he is throwing a 20-yard pass to his receiver downfield. And Cam Newton's the same way. And Jameis Winston's the same way. These guys are great athletes. They're not great quarterbacks. And I don't think he ever will be. I think they'll give up on him at some point in time, and he will never materialize to be a quarterback who's going to take Houston far into the playoffs or even toward the Super Bowl. They'll never get there, as will not Jameis Winston. I know that Cam Newton got there one time, but I don't think you'll ever see that door again.
Okay.
I just don't think great athletes make great quarterbacks. I think great quarterbacks.
Elway was a great athlete. John Elway ran 4,000 yards in his career.
Right. And it took him 4 years. It took him 4 years to get those 4,000 yards because he was so slow.
His career because he was a quarterback. I mean, to say John Elway was slow is just asinine, especially at the start of his career. Would you look at him when he's 37? Sure, he was slow. But when he was 23 or 24, it was what he was known for. He had years where he ran for 400 or 500 yards for a quarterback.
All right, let me rephrase it to some degree. John Elway
was drafted
ran
by Major League Baseball. So
John Elway ran because he had to run. A lot of these quarterbacks, like Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson, those guys run because they want to run. They're wishbone college quarterbacks who the way they ran their offenses. They ran. I say wishbone. I use that as a metaphor for the offenses were set up for them to run the ball as much as any running back in their team. That does not play well in the NFL. And I do not think that style of quarterback is ever going to make it in the NFL.
I agree, but to say that is the kind of quarterback Deshaun Watson is nuts. I mean, all you had to do was watch him in college for a while. I mean, they were in a pro spread offense, and he didn't run that often. He ran when he had to run. He's more like Russell Wilson than Cam Newton.
Yeah, well, I think that the Oilers will give up on him before he ever does anything magnanimous in Houston.
And John Elway ran a 4.75 at the Combine in 1983.
Okay.
Which is pretty fast for a quarterback.
Yeah.
It's not Joe Flacco. All right, Blaine Gabbert, I think we can all agree that we can ignore him and go to the NFC West. We've got Jared Goff so far in the NFC West, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. His team's 2-0. He doesn't have to win games for his team, but he does make enough plays now that if you get to that point, he can. You got Todd Gurley running the ball. He's got weapons at the ass. I'm still not completely sold on Goff, but I think he's turned out to be better than what I thought he would be.
I agree. He's in the perfect situation. He's in the perfect storm. He has the luxury of not being that great, but looking great because of what he's got surrounding him. As long as he doesn't screw things up, he's going to be fine. He's going to do his job. He's going to get better. He's going to have the opportunity to get better because he's going to be able to play from a learning position rather than a survival position, if you get my drift.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to do things that will teach him to be a better quarterback because of the offensive weaponry and the defense that he has. He won't be overtaxed on the field. It's not likely there's a lot of games where he's going to have to throw 60 passes to get his team back into it. You aren't going to find that with the Rams during the early part of his career. He's in the perfect situation for a young quarterback. He got the lucky draft club. He got with the right team at the right time. He's going to end up being a very good quarterback, but he's not going to go down as an Aaron Rodgers or a game-winning Super Bowl quarterback. He may win a Super Bowl, but he'll do it because of the entire team and his coaching staff, not simply because he'll drive him to the Super Bowl on his own. So he's in a good position. There's no reason to not like Jared Goff. He's going to be fine.
Next up, we got Jimmy Garoppolo. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks so far. Played much better last week, 18 for 26, 2 touchdowns. The week before, he was terrible against Minnesota. He was below 50% completion, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. The thing that stands out here is he's been sacked 9 times, and he's going to have a long year because his offensive line's not that good. The people that thought that this was a playoff team, especially a team that could compete with the Rams, I think are shown to be completely out of their minds. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but until they fix that offensive line, he probably won't be able to show it.
Yeah, I agree. Garoppolo. I'm sold on Garoppolo as a quarterback. I still think the Patriots made a mistake letting him go. Although I don't know how much of a choice they had because he wanted to play and whatever the reasons were there with Brady and everything going on with him being in the fold. But I think he's got all the tools to be a good quarterback. I think they just need to get the team up to his level, and that may take 2 or 3 or 4 years. As long as he doesn't get banged up and hurt and the crap beat out of him between now and then, I think in 4 or 5 years he'll be a Super Bowl contending quarterback. He's got the talent, the skills, seems to have the poise, everything. He just doesn't have the support. He's doing it. Whatever he's doing entirely on his own there right now.
All right. Next up, we've got Russell Wilson, who I think is an elite NFL quarterback on one of the probably 5 worst teams in the NFL. If you look at his stats, I think with what he's got around him, it's amazing that he's got a quarterback rating of 90, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They're 0-2. They lost at Denver and at Chicago, both teams that are 2 of the best defensive teams in football. He's been sacked 12 times in 2 games. So the fact that his quarterback rating is 90 and he's getting sacked 12 times in 2 games, it's kind of mind-blowing to me. I think this is going to be a long year for Russell Wilson, though.
Yeah, he's a player that, boy, if you could say, I'd like to see any one quarterback in the league traded to a better team, it would be Russell Wilson because he's a class act all the way around and really deserves better than what he's getting. And it's not going to bear out in Seattle. He's, like you said, he's just going to get pummeled year-round. And knowing the mobility that Russell Wilson has and the speed that he has and the athleticism that he has, and to still say he's sacked 12 times, it tells you how bad it is. When you got a guy, it's not like you got Ben Roethlisberger sitting back there who can't move 10 feet either direction in 20 seconds. And Wilson's got the ability to get in and out, dart and move. He's still getting nailed behind the line 12 times. So that's a bad situation. I think it's going to be a tough year, like you said, for him. And, how long before he decides he starts wanting to be traded somewhere to where he has a chance to win a Super Bowl again, because he's not going to get it in the situation he's in right now. It's just going to be a bad year for him all the way around.
All right, next we go to the AFC East, where we already know what Tom Brady is. Do we even have to discuss Tom Brady?
No, other than the fact that I think that Tom Brady probably has peaked, and we all know that he's
peaked. He's 40-something years old. He's had to peak a long time ago.
Well, I don't know that he has. I think you're just. I think that the only thing I say about Brady and the Patriots and Belichick is they probably will still win, and somehow I believe they may still end up in the Super Bowl again because they're just that good. But I think it's going to come harder for Brady and for Belichick and the Pats this year than it has in the past.
Well,
I think that's a combination of some better teams in the AFC.
I think we've seen Tom Brady in the Super Bowl for the last time last year.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I just think team-wise, their defense is not very good. He's been sacked 4 times already, which is a lot. That's twice a game. That's 32 times for the season. I think the O-line has difficulties. I think the defense is bad. You got Josh Gordon now, but who knows what you're going to get with him. If they're going to make one last run, it's going to be this year. But I think we may have already seen that last run because you got 4 or 5 teams in the AFC now. They're just more complete teams that have really good quarterbacks. And eventually, this has got to catch up to him. So when you look at it, I think this could be the year. And I think he'll still have a Pro Bowl year. He'll still get to the playoffs because they're going to run away with the AFC East probably. But I just think it's coming to a close as a team. I don't think they're as talented as what they have been, and I think they weren't the last couple years either. They've just gotten by because the AFC wasn't very good.
Right, and that's the point I was making too. Is that you're going to start? It's going to come harder for them. Now, I think the saving factor from you alluded to this was that they're in the AFC East. They have as good a shot of anybody of garnering home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Because the AFC East is so weak, if they can win their division, win it handily, and get through everybody and not losing games within their division, they can capture the AFC East, capture the best record possibly still in the AFC, and get home field advantage. Winning at New England in the winter is not an easy thing to do. Not a lot of teams go up there and do that. That's their savior in terms of being their fifth wheel toward the playoffs, if they get into the playoffs or get a good shot at it. But they need to have a good race. They need to win all their divisional games, and they need to get that best home field advantage again for this season, more so than ever. I think this is going to be tough for this team to win on the road. Tougher. I still think they're going to be a team to be contend with, and in the end, it's still going to come down to New England and somebody.
All right.
But you're right. They may not get there.
Yeah, and when you look at the rest of the division, I mean, Ryan Tannehill's a decent quarterback. You got Sam Darnold. You got Josh Allen. I don't think there are any threats this year. So, I mean, the only threat here is Tannehill. And I just don't think the Dolphins are talented enough to pull this off. They're talented enough to get 4 easy wins against those teams and beat a bunch of other teams with bad records to have a shot at the playoffs, though.
Has Tannehill ever gone through a season without injury?
Yeah.
Has he? Okay.
Just not recently.
I don't. Yeah, just not recently. I remember him as a rookie on Hard Knocks, and he was getting hurt then. And it seemed to me that every year something's come up where he's been knocked out for 2 or 3 or 4 games or the season due to injuries, knee injuries and things of that nature. So I don't know if he's ever been able to live up to anywhere near his full potential. Seems to be good when he's playing. Seems to have all the skill sets, but I just don't know how much he plays. And another one of those guys, he's a little too fragile.
Yeah, he is. He is a little too fragile rock.
Yep. Next
up, we've got the NFC East. We got Alex Smith. Been sacked 6 times already this year. Offensive line plays really bad in the NFL overall. He's put up good numbers. He's a tough guy. I just don't think he's got enough in Washington around him to be able to win. And I think the same thing could be said for Dak Prescott and Eli Manning. You know, all 3 teams, I think, have questions on the offensive line. I don't think any of the 3 have enough weapons on offense. And I think the Eagles are going to run away with this when they get Carson Wentz back.
Yeah, I will see what Carson does this weekend. His first game back, because he's got the cold, so he should have a fairly easy defense to pick apart. The Colts are not very strong defensively in the backfield. But, yeah, Carson's definitely going to make a big difference there. I'll tell you, Manning, I just as much as I like the Manning family, obviously with Peyton in Indianapolis, I watched the Cowboys and the Giants play, and Manning just doesn't complete plays.
He's getting healthy.
And it's not always, but not all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times.
This is the thing, though. As a quarterback, about 4 or 5 years ago, their offensive line went to hell. He's been bad ever since. And I think what you get is, even when he's not getting rushed, his inner clock is sped up so much that he is so discombobulated that he really can't do anything.
Yeah, well, then you're worthless.
No, you're worthless, Steve. Just because you don't like my opinion doesn't mean you have to call me worthless. That's just rude.
No, I didn't say you're worthless. I meant to say that Manning's worthless. The thing is, what I saw Manning do several times against the Cowboys was he'd have a 3rd and 8, and he'd throw the ball 4 yards under the coverage. It's like, good God, you can at least buy yourself enough time at your seniority, at your level, to throw the ball 8 yards, so at least you can get, because you're getting hit. They know what you're doing. You're underthrowing, and they were doing this against the Cowboys, and he was always throwing the ball like 6 yards on an 8-yard first down. And it's like, come on, Eli, get the ball past the yellow line and throw it there. Get your receivers to run their routes to that point so you at least pick up the first down. And I'm thinking he stalled so many drives by doing that. It's like his decision making. Now maybe it's because he's discombobulated and his inner clock is running too fast. But if that's the case, then you're not effective for your football team, especially when you're paying him the kind of money he's getting paid, and he's got the seniority that he has and the tenure in the league that he should be able to overcome all that. I was once an Eli Manning fan. I think right now they need to move on. I don't think they're going to win with him.
Well,
I think he's part of the.
They need to get an offensive line before they do anything. I mean, because without the offensive line, it doesn't matter. I do agree. He does look old. I defended him up until this, but it's getting to be a little too much. I think he's the best Manning to ever play quarterback, especially in a big situation. But I think that he's seen his better days.
Yeah, I just think that get an offensive line. You need to retool your quarterback. I mean, they need a lot of work. I mean, I don't know why guys like Odell Beckham would sign for the money that he does. He got the money, but he's looking at a quarterback who I'm not sure can get him the football half the time he needs it. Really, truly, if I was Odell, I'd be thinking, boy, that's a lot of money, but I want a ring, and he's not going to get one playing for the Giants as long as Eli Manning's quarterback in that football team. And granted, they need an offensive line, but so do 3/4 of the other teams in the NFL too. I mean, there aren't a lot of teams that have great offensive lines.
They may have the worst offensive line in all of football.
Yeah, well, I can't dispute that because I haven't rated the offensive lines yet. That'll be Friday's show. We'll rate offensive lines. No, we won't.
Why not?
I don't want to. But I just think that Eli Manning is past his prime. He's past his effectiveness. He's past his ability to win big games in the NFL. And I think it's time for them to move Eli Manning out and to retool with a new line and a new quarterback and change the era. Change the culture for the Giants, or they will just flounder. And then they'll lose Odell Beckham because he'll demand to be traded.
All right.
And somebody like Green Bay will scoop up the $33 million a year he's getting paid and taking.
Yeah. And we can talk more about the NFC East in a couple of weeks when Carson Wentz has been playing for a couple of weeks, because I think that they end up being a huge threat to return to the Super Bowl with Wentz.
No doubt.
Next up, I know a subject near and dear to your heart since he used to be an Indianapolis Colt. Vontae Davis retired at halftime at a Buffalo Bills game on Sunday. What's your take?
I got just great emotions on both sides of the fence on this one. I think it was a cheesy thing to do. I think it's not the legacy that I'd want to walk away from the game on doing that, because there's nothing classy about leaving your team unless he's injured and being carted off the field on a stretcher and says, that's it, I broke my leg for the 10th time or tore my meniscus for the 10th time. I'm retiring right now. But just to walk into the locker room at halftime, playing for the worst team in the NFL, and go to the locker room, take a shower, put your street clothes on, and say, I retire, I think is just pure Vontae Davis, not classy, not the way you want to be remembered leaving the NFL. But on the other hand, he got his guaranteed salary, his money, by doing that, allegedly. I've heard two stories. One is his money was guaranteed 2 weeks earlier, that he already had the guaranteed money, that wasn't the reason he did it.
As soon as he made the roster.
So he had it as soon as he made the roster, so it's not it. So if that's the case, then it was a classless thing to do. I think he should have at least waited to the end of the game and sat it out. I know you've made comments about it's most dangerous for a player when he decides he doesn't want to play anymore. He could have just said, I'm done, I'm hurt, I don't want to play, I'm not feeling well, I don't want to play the second half, and then retired at the end of the season, or at the end of the game.
All right, but this is what Vontae Davis's response has been. This is what he tweeted after, he quit. And his tweet is this. This isn't how I pictured retiring from the NFL. But in my 10th NFL season, I've been doing what my body has been programmed to do. Get ready to play a game. I've endured multiple surgeries, played through many different injuries throughout my career, and over the last few weeks, this was the latest physical challenge. But today on the field, reality hit me fast and hard. I shouldn't be out here anymore. I meant no disrespect to my teammates and coaches, but I hold myself to a standard. Mentally, I always expect myself to play at a high level, but physically, I know today that isn't possible. And I had an honest moment with myself while I was on the field. I just didn't feel right, and I told the coaches, I'm not feeling like myself. I also wondered, do I want to keep sacrificing? And truthfully, I do not, because the season is long, and it's more important for me and my family to walk away healthy than to willfully embrace the warrior mentality and limp away too late. This was an overwhelming decision, but I am at peace with myself and my family. I choose to be grateful to God for allowing me to play the game that I have loved as a boy until I turned 30 years old. I choose to be grateful to God for being part of the NFL and making lifelong friends over the last decade. There were roadblocks and pitfalls along the way, but I'm grateful to God for all of it because He doesn't promise any of us an easy journey. Lastly, I'm grateful to God for what He has in store for me ahead in this next chapter of my life. The end.
And he could have done all that in 30 minutes at the end of the game. That was not classy. It's not classy to walk away from your team in the middle. I mean, it just shows you're a quitter.
Mm-hmm.
That in the middle of the heat to come to.
It's not classy to ban somebody for the NFL for taking a knee. It's not classy to sign a guy who's beat the hell out of his girlfriend. It's not classy to do any of this stuff. And don't give me two wrongs don't make it right, because what did Von Davis do wrong? He was done playing. He quit.
Okay.
It's not playing basketball. You're risking your life here. You're risking your physical well-being. If all of a sudden, put it like this, if your son, when he played football, just walked up to you in the middle of a game and said, hey, I don't feel like doing this anymore. It's not worth it. Would you tell him to shut up and finish the game?
Yes.
Did you say no or yes? I couldn't tell.
I say yes. Go play.
I say yes. Okay, so you would be all right with risking the health part for a game.
It's a risk every time you step on the field.
Exactly. So when that risk is something you don't want to take on anymore, is it better not?
I think Vontae Davis could have gone to his coaching staff and said, look, I want to retire. I'm done playing. I do not want to play the second half. To save grace for everybody, do not play me the second half. The minute it's over, I'll go in the press room and I'll announce my retirement. Let's make it about the team right now, and we'll make it about me after the game. Let's don't make it about me at halftime when you get your butts handed to you again. That's exactly what he should have done. He should have went to the coaches and said, I'm going to retire at the end of the game. I do not want to play the second half of this game.
Yeah.
I'll stand on the sidelines. I'll cheer on my teammates. And I'll root, and I'll be a smile on my face. I'll go in the press room after the game, and I will just stand up, and I will read this statement I've prepared, and I will announce that I am effective immediately retiring, rather than just walk off the field at halftime.
I don't see what the difference is.
Shower while the other players are sitting there getting their brains beat out, playing the game, sweating, bleeding, and everything, and they see Davis in there taking a shower, putting on his big coat, and smoking a cigar and walking off into the sunset with his big paycheck. Not the way I would think I would handle it with my teammates who I've made great friends with over 10 years, built lasting relationships.
Oh, he was only there
I want to thank God
weeks.
for the journey that I've gotten to take and everything. I think he could have postponed that for 30 minutes and let the game take its course and then made it about him.
Yeah, I don't care. Anytime these guys stick it to the NFL, I'm good with it.
Well, you saying I don't care means you're saying, you're right, Steve. He should have waited to the end of the game.
No.
Just go ahead and say that.
I'm saying this. Anytime somebody can stick it to the NFL, I'm good with it. They stick it to players all the time. You know, there's been NFL players cut at halftime of games before. Nobody told the coach, well, maybe you should have waited till the end of the game. I mean, I think back in like the 60s or 70s, but still it happens.
Right.
You get cut all the time. I don't really care. It's the Buffalo Bills are not even an NFL team.
I would bet unless you're a first or second team player, most of the decisions are made by players getting cut are done because of financial reasons. Well, if we keep him along for another week, we got to pay him.
That's why the average NFL career is like 3 to 3.5 years, and the pension kicks in just after 3.5 years.
Right, and that's why they look at it and go, we get rid of him this week, we don't have to pay him pension.
Yep.
If we keep him this week, even though he's marginal, we may need him, but You know what? Pull somebody off the practice squad and get rid of him.
And now
sure, that's the business of the game.
Question for me. This is my answer. That is why.
No, I'm looking at it from Vontae Davis's perspective. That I think he blew it for himself. I don't think it was a classy thing to do. I think he could have easily handled it a lot better and just told the coaches privately, I'm retiring. I don't want to play second half. I'll announce it at the end of the game in the press room right here. And that saves your face for not playing me. And I'm done. I walk away. I don't come to meetings on Monday. I'm done. Let's do it that way. So there's no controversy over this during the game.
All right. Now, the other question, because I'm tired of talking about the Buffalo Bills, because they're as bad as any team I think I've seen. And they were in the playoffs last year, which will tell you how quickly things can turn around in the NFL. But talking about turning around in the NFL, the Raiders a year or two ago were, the big hip thing. In a couple of years, they were going to be winning Super Bowls, that they were going to be in Vegas, and now everything's kind of derailed. And the biggest derailment is Khalil Mack. And the question is this. There's only been 2 players in NFL history that have won the NFL MVP that were defensive players. And I think Khalil Mack, at some point, is going to win that award too. And I think he could do it this year, Steve.
I disagree.
Why?
I don't think I've only seen him play 2 games really this year.
Yeah. They've only played 2 games this year, Steve.
Well, I know, and I didn't watch the Raiders play last year, so I didn't see a lot of Khalil Mack play last year. He's definitely the premier defensive player in the league right now, but most valuable player, I don't know. That's a tough call. It's a tough thing for a defensive player to win.
All right.
Time will have to tell.
Was Lawrence Taylor.
Lawrence Taylor.
He was a rookie. Now, I've never seen a player outside of Lawrence Taylor have the impact Khalil Mack has had on a team. If this team was to go 9-7 and slip into the playoffs, I think he's the MVP if he continues to play the way he has. And he's played this way for the last 4 years. 2017, he was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. But my comparison here is this. The New York Giants in 1981 were a team that had not made the playoffs since the Giants played in the NFL Championship game in 1963, where they lost to the Bears at old Wrigley Field 14-10. After those 17 years, they get Lawrence Taylor. Drafted him in the first round from North Carolina in 1981. Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick were the defensive coaches on that team. And they used him as like an outside linebacker, defensive end, just like Khalil Mack. And the thing you got to remember about Khalil Mack also is this. In 2017, when he was the Defensive Player of the Year, he also made, not the Pro Bowl team, but the All-Pro team, which is a lot bigger. It's the 2 best players at each position. He made the All-Pro team at defensive end and outside linebacker in the same year. But the thing about Lawrence Taylor is he took a team with the Giants who really didn't have a quarterback. Their starting quarterback was Phil Simms at the start, but he gets benched. Scott Bruner ends up taking over. Scott Bruner, Mitchell Trubisky, I think are fairly comparable. But Khalil Mack, just like Lawrence Taylor, makes this defense maybe the best defense in the NFL. He makes plays that impact almost every game you see him play in. So I think that if he elevates his team and does something special, and they end up being a playoff team, I could see him being the NFL MVP. And I think down the road, we're going to come to find out that Khalil Mack is up there with Lawrence Taylor. He's that kind of talent. And the thing is, only Alan Page in 1971 and Lawrence Taylor in 1981 have ever done this. And the thing about Khalil Mack is, number one, if he does this in Chicago, that's a huge city. He's taken a team to the playoffs that really, other than a year or 2 here or there, have not been relevant since the late 80s. And that would be a huge story for the NFL. And remember this, the NFL likes their huge stories. So if you get Khalil Mack to take the Bears to the playoffs, I think Khalil Mack has a chance to make the playoff or make the NFL MVP award.
Well, he's got a chance. There's no doubt he has a chance, but I don't think he'll get it. I think right now the hype on Khalil Mack is the idiot trade that Oakland made. I think there's all that still like, can you believe Oakland made the dumb trade? And actually, Oakland didn't come out too bad. They got a bunch of first-round draft picks out of it.
They came out really bad, Steve, because what you're talking about with Khalil Mack is a guy that when he's done will go down as one of the 5 greatest defensive players of all time. What are the chances you're going to draft one of those guys with those draft picks? John Gruden screwed this up bad enough that if he's still under 500 at the end of next year, even with a $100 million guaranteed contract, they're going to fire his ass before they get to Vegas. Khalil Mack is special. Anytime you've watched him play over the last 4 years, he was the best defensive player on the field. And he's been the best defensive player in the NFL, for my money, for the last 3 years. The Raiders screwed up. There's nothing the Raiders could have gotten that could have equaled that, because what are the chances they draft a guy that's a Hall of Fame impact outside linebacker pass rusher with those picks?
Yeah, I mean, that could just not be the direction that Gruden wanted to go with the Raiders. He wanted to be more offensive. I don't know what he's thinking. There's a lot of ifs and nuts that got to fall into place for Khalil Mack to win the MVP, as is for any player to win the MVP. First off, the Bears have got to show some promise and make the playoffs. We don't even know if they're capable of doing that yet.
No, we don't. But what I'm saying is this: if they do make it, he had a season much like Lawrence Taylor in 1981 that people won't forget. And Lawrence Taylor was so good that season that they actually beat the defending NFC champions Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia in the wild card game with Lawrence Taylor. And then they went to San Francisco and gave the 49ers all they could handle in a 38-24 loss. I'm just saying this. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky is good enough to get them to the playoffs. If they get to the playoffs, Khalil Mack's the guy that got them there. And if he gets Chicago to the playoffs, I think he's got more than a shot.
Okay.
Unless Patrick Mahomes does go with 80 touchdowns and no interceptions.
You're looking at a lot of guys on the Rams. Gurley repeating. Gurley's, you got a lot of great players out there to say that go ahead at week 2 to say this is the front runner for most valuable player in the league.
Well, somebody's got to be the front runner after week 2. There's got to be somebody after week 3.
Well, I would probably put my money on Fitzpatrick or Patrick Mahomes first, because they've turned 2 teams around to undefeated records. But again, it's silly to pick either one of those 2 guys.
Patrick Mahomes' team in Kansas City was in the playoffs last year. Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, these guys. Ryan Fitzpatrick's been in the league for a decade and has never proven that he could do something like this. Patrick Mahomes is basically a first-year starter. We don't know what they're going to do the rest of the year. We already know what Khalil Mack's going to do because we've watched him do it for 5 years. Steve?
Hello?
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
I think it's a silly argument to have at this point in time. I think he's definitely the premier defensive player in the league. From what I've seen him play, he moves without the ball. He's all over the field. He plays at 120% on every single play. He definitely is going to be the biggest defensive factor if he stays healthy for any team. I believe any single player, he will be the biggest impact player of any single player on defense in the NFL at this point in time, from what I've seen him play. But to say he's going to be the NFL MVP, there's a lot of things got to happen. It's kind of like the Titanic. So the Titanic to sink, there were 13 stupid things that had to happen, and every one of them had to happen in sequence. If any one of those 13 things don't happen, the Titanic doesn't sink. But they all happened in sequence, and it sank.
Well, so I think without that happening, we wouldn't have got to see the Titanic movie. That was a really good movie.
But for Khalil Mack to win the NFL's MVP as a defensive player, there's a lot of things that have to happen. The Bears have to be good. They have to be competitive in every game. They have to be brutal defensively. They've got to make the playoffs. They've got to make a run in the playoffs. They have to be a contender, not get to the Super Bowl necessarily, but they can't just be some team that's going to flop in at 8-8 and get an away game somewhere in Los Angeles and get drilled by 40 points.
Oh, yeah, they can.
That's not going to get it done.
Why wouldn't that get
he definitely is leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year.
But why wouldn't it
get done
be
hard
if
to
he
beat?
got beat in the first round of the playoffs? Because the voting's done at the end of the season, not the playoffs.
Okay. All right.
So the playoffs aren't taken into consideration, I do not believe.
Okay. I figured that was the case. I figured you'd catch me on that one, but it was worth a shot.
What the hell? You want to tell everybody about the Indiana Basketball Weekly show tonight with Colin Hartman and yourself?
Yeah, we have Volume 2 of Indiana Basketball Weekly tonight with Colin. Colin and I and Mike Goodpaster, our esteemed master of ceremonies, will be taking one last look at the preseason workouts of the teams, what's leading up to next week when they go into March Madness night. So all the schools have their Midnight Madness and come into play, and the season actually gets underway. I think most colleges are playing games now. College basketball will start within 50 days. So we're talking less than 2 months before you'll have college basketball on the docket. Colin and I, again, we're going to try to put together some fun things that happened in preseason practice that we can remember from our recollection of playing. And, again, just take one last good look at the team before they head into it while they're all healthy and what they're thinking, and just provide as much insight as we can going into it to give you some things to take a look at as the season starts to unfold and the press coverage starts to roll out more and more on day-to-day events at the Indiana Hoops and all of college basketball in general. So that'll be on tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. I believe we'll broadcast it live, won't we?
Yes, we will. On the Grueling.
We will broadcast it live, and it will be up for replay shortly afterwards. So take a listen, and it will be on every Wednesday throughout the season. And we will be doing post-game shows for most of the games. Sometimes if they have a game like two games in 3 days, we'll probably just do one show and double up and cover 2 games at one time. So we'll go there, but we will begin more and more extensive coverage of Indiana basketball starting tonight and carrying it all the way through the rest of the season up until the Final Four in Indianapolis. It's not in Indianapolis this year. Where's it at this year?
The Final Four in Minnesota, I think.
Yeah, it's in Minnesota. Oh, boy. That'll be fun. But hopefully Indiana will be making a run to go play in Minnesota. Not likely, but you never know. Khalil Mack could win the NFL MVP, and Indiana could get to the Final Four all in the same year.
All righty. Also tonight, we will have – I didn't know you were done. You just abruptly ended your sentence there.
Like the Titanic. It just sunk.
Yeah, but at least I got to see Kate Winslet's boobs. All right. Tonight at 9:30, we'll have Week 15 at the CFL Pick'em Show with me, Brian Schmidt, and 4-time Grey Cup champion, Robert Drummond. Also, tomorrow night, we'll have Inside Boxing Weekly with me, Jeremiah, and John, previewing the heavyweight title fight between Anthony Joshua and Alexander Povetkin, which comes up Saturday afternoon. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.